Do you want to create content smarter, not harder? You can easily create more content without feeling content production burnout, taking up hours and hours of your day or week just by simply creating a daily, consistent content habit. Creating a daily content habit saves you time and energy by helping you create content with laser focus and efficiency without it seeming like a whole big deal. Intrigued? In this video, I'm walking you through the process of establishing your own daily content habit and giving you my top 10 tips to get started and stick with it. Welcome back to Your Content Empire, the YouTube channel dedicated to helping you get more consistent and profitable with content the easy way. I'm your host, Haley Dale, a content and sales funnel strategist obsessed with bringing you all the latest and greatest in content and marketing. I know that creating consistent content doesn't come naturally to everyone. Believe it or not, it certainly didn't for me. I once struggled with practically crippling perfectionism and overthinking, which made it impossible to feel satisfied with anything I wrote. But now creating content is literally the bright spot of my work and the part that I most look forward to. If I don't have time for daily content creation or to be creating stuff, I feel uncreative, I feel uninspired, I feel disconnected from my business. And so that daily content habit, or just like that spot to play and think about ideas and iterate them into pieces of content, that is what gives me the most fulfillment in my work. But that may not be you, and that's fine. I'm still going to walk you through an easy way of turning your daily content or your weekly content or your monthly content into more of a habit and less of a task so that it comes easier. I see my content as a way of exploring new ideas, being creative with how to articulate them, and being generous for my audience with all my know-how and systems. And if a typo sneaks in through the editing process now and then, well, there are better things to worry about it. So what got me from my writing can't see the light of day to truly embracing done is better than perfect and loving content creation? Well, in 2016, to go way, way back here, I gave myself what I thought was an impossible challenge: write a new blog post every single day for 100 days. And this was coming at a time where any writing really felt like pulling teeth for me. And what I discovered from committing to that 100 days is that the hardest part of content creation is just getting started, as long as you already have the idea, because if you don't, the hardest part is figuring out what to write and just staring at that blinking cursor, until you run out of time. But once you have that idea, it becomes almost impossible not to finish, even if it is far from perfect. Now, just to sneak peek it here, it's not like every single one of those 100 blog posts saw the light of day, right? This wasn't about that. It was about getting over my perfectionism and starting to change my relationship with content creation and starting to see, it is something that, I could sit down and write when needed or sit down and create when needed rather than making it such a big deal in my head. So in this episode, I'm going to show you how to start a daily content habit yourself and challenge you, if you're up for it, to stick with it for 90 days. Because if you do, you're going to see a complete 180 in your view of content creation, as well as your skill and efficiency at creating it. Plus, you're also going to learn my 10 tips that I learned the hard way to make that daily content habit much, much easier. First things first, though, what is a content habit? You're like, what is this mumbo jumbo that you're talking about? So if the word, content instinctually makes you tense up a little bit, you are far from alone. Most people think of content as a task or a project that pops up again and again on their to-do list, something that urgently needs to be squeezed in amongst a long list of other priorities. But it's much more accurate and much more helpful to think and change your perception of content by thinking of it not as a task, but more as a habit instead. Content is rarely a one and done kind of task unless you're using my minimalist content strategy, but this is not about that. So the more that you start to see content creation as a habit or a routine, the more you're going to be able to find opportunities to streamline and elevate it. My content habit is something that I do every single day for about 25 minutes a day before I begin the main part of my workday. So I wake up, I do my morning routine, I grab my tea, and then I, write for 25 minutes before I officially go to my desk and start my workday. And I'm usually working on, so I write for about 25 minutes a day, and I pick a prompt from an ever-growing list or tackle the next one if I'm working on a predefined list for a bigger content project. So I usually have my prompt figured out ahead of time. That's what I'm trying to say. Then I set a timer for 10 minutes, and once I'm finished, 25 minutes, sorry. And then once I'm finished, I consider my content creation job for the day as done, right? So it's something that I'm able to check off and feel really accomplished. And by the end of the week, I process all of my writing for my content habit, editing things, deciding what to publish, deciding what not to use, and saving things so that I can come back to them later. What I really love best about this content habit approach to content creation is that I really start the day by creating something before I consume other people's ideas. That allows me to figure out what are my thoughts around X, Y, and Z rather than absorbing all this other information. I start the day with a big giant check mark so I feel more productive right away. I set the tone for my day and instantly feel more creative and inspired and connected to my business and my purpose. I never run out of things to share on social media or other content channels, and I've gotten quicker and quicker at writing content, creating content. I can whip up a pretty good blog post in around 25 minutes now. I can make massive progress on huge content projects like my book, a launch, a new freebie in tiny little 25-minute blocks, and I create better content, right? Practice makes proficient after all. And there are so many other perks, but those are just really the highlights. We're just putting the finishing touches on a new app, the Daily Content Habit app. So if you want endless inspiration and a way to track your progress and make getting started easier, sign up below to be the first to know when it drops. And if you want to test out your content habit, I have put together a free journal for you to try. So it'll have all of those prompts in there for you to take this on a spin for the next week. You'll find that down below the video as well. So while you're testing out the content habit, I wanted to share my top 10 tips for getting started and sticking with it. Content habit tip number 1 is to decide what you're going to write before you sit down to create content. So before you open up the floodgates of creativity and see where your content flows, it's really important to decide what you're going to write about or what you're going to create content about if you're not writing beforehand. Why? Because the part of your brain that's used for planning and strategy and decision making, the prefrontal cortex, is different from the creative side of your brain that deals with creativity and expressing yourself, generally thought to be the left hemisphere of the brain's frontal lobe. So by planning a topic in advance, you save yourself from having to make that exhausting mental shift. And this also saves you time because it allows you to just show up and as soon as you start creating content right away. This is why I find it so helpful to have a list of ideas or prompts handy for those times you feel stumped on what to write about. For example, when I'm planning my week, I spend some time coming up with my list of weekly content prompts for my content habit. Well, now I just go into the content habit app and use those ones there. But when I was doing this manually, that's where I would grab them. And all of this planning happens in advance so that when I sit down to write, I don't waste any time not writing or not creating content. I have put together some prompts for you to test out in a free content habit journal down below this video. Then content habit tip number 2 is to decide on the how. So when it comes to building content consistency and routinely, the how is just as important as the what and the when. The how is the method by which you create your content. So you can use a Word doc like a Google Docs or a writing software like Scrivener or 750 words, or just go with classic pen and paper. Another option would be to speak your writing into a tool like otter.ai, or you could test out the Content Habit app that'll be launching in a couple of weeks from now. Get on the wait list now. It's important to really choose a method though that suits you and your content creation process. But that doesn't mean that you're tied to your first pick, right? If you're not sure, whatever you choose, try it for a week, and if it doesn't feel like the perfect fit, you can switch it up. And even if you do find the perfect fit, sometimes it can be more productive to switch it up once in a while to keep your brain guessing, right? Stop yourself from getting too comfortable. Content habit tip number 3 is to give yourself a jumping off point. So just like I mentioned before, when it comes to creating content, just getting started is often the hardest part. This is why giving yourself a jumping off point, that's where that comes in. By giving yourself like a sentence starter or a question you don't technically even even need to begin. You just keep that sentence going. For example, here are a few jump off sentence starters just to get your wheels turning. So one might be, the most important thing to remember about topic is da 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 da. Then the biggest thing I've learned about topic is da 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 da, right? So you can just finish those sentences. When I was first getting started with topic, I realized da 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 da, right? So finish those off, give yourself some sentence starters. Those could be really helpful if you struggle to start. It's also helpful to have some swipe files, so a collection of your favorite marketing ideas or examples on hand to inspire you when you're getting stuck. Not talking about copying anyone here, but I am talking about using those sentence starters as a way of getting your own wheels turning and just start getting some words on a page. One of my favorite strategies for giving myself a jumping off point is to break the topic into a list of questions. Then when I'm writing, I simply focus on answering that question, and I don't need to focus about like structuring the perfect paragraph or structuring the perfect words. All I need to do is, answer those questions. It's as simple as that. And that's exactly how I've designed the Content Habit app. The prompts are broken down into a series of questions so that you can just focus on answering them and assembling them into posts to share. Content habit tip number 4 is to set a timer. So Parkin's law states that a task will expand to fit the time that we allot for it. This is why it's important to set time boundaries, because if you don't, the task could realistically take you all day. Setting realistic time constraints will help you stay focused on task and often helps you get more done in a smaller window of time. You can set a timer on your phone or use a timer app. My go-to is the Pomodoro method. I use Be Focused Pro on my computer, and it also integrates with my phone as well as my tablet as well. So no matter where I'm writing, I can still use that timer. And if you aren't familiar with the Pomodoro method, it's a time management technique in which work is completed in 25-minute stretches, and each stretch is broken up into 5-minute breaks. After 4 or 5 ultra focused stretches, you can take a longer break. And like I mentioned, my favorite app is Be Focused Pro. This can really relieve the pressure of expectations because all you really need to do is just finish that 25-minute timer. If you don't get all of it written in 25 minutes, fine, you can quit once that timer is done. Or if you're feeling really inspired, you can just wrap up a few pieces there just to get it done. This is exactly why we've built timers into the Content Habit app. But Content Habit tip number 5, when you get stuck, think questions. So I kind of touched on this before, but if you get stuck during the content creation process, there's one strategy you can always fall back on, and that is questions. So when you're thinking about your topic, you can break your topic into a series of questions and simply answer each question. For example, maybe your topic is how to write a blog post, how meta. Here's how you might break that up into questions that the piece of content needs to answer. So number 1, why does writing blog post matter for business owners or whoever your audience is? How do you pick a topic, and why is this the first step? How do you create an outline? How do you create an introduction? How do you create body sections? How do you write a conclusion? What is the process for editing the post? What are my final parting words or things that I want my reader or watcher or listener to remember? So you can see here that I've taken that topic and I've broken it down into the individual sections that might be included in that blog post, and I've structured them in a way that I can take each of those questions and rewrite them into headers or subheaders for my blog post. But when I'm doing like the writing or that daily content habit, creation habit, I can simply just focus on answering those questions. This takes the pressure off of thinking about what to say because all you need to do is answer each individual question. Content habit tip number 6 is to try speaking. So do you think and articulate better when you're not strapped to a keyboard? Then when you're creating, consider ditching the writing. You can talk through your post points and your post questions and record yourself using a voice program recorder like something like Otter just on your phone and send it to be transcribed once you're done. Then you can edit it, clean it up into paragraphs or sections. And this is also ideal for people who, articulate better when they're moving or pacing. So don't be afraid to take your content creation on the go. Content habit tip number 7 is to turn off your inner critic. As you work on building your content habit, don't let your inner critic get the best of you. Focus on the routine that you're creating and emphasize the value of your input, right? You showing up, you completing the timer, you finishing the prompt, and less about what the output is going to be. You always have time to finesse during the editing process, and the more you get into that habit, the greater quality content you're going to be creating right out of the gate the first time. All that's required of you is to show up and meet the time commitment that you've set. Content habit tip number 8 is to bookend your day. So when is the best time to implement a content habit? Well, I highly recommend doing it at the start of your workday. It makes a great brain warm up and sets this habit as a top priority in your day and your work, which means, it won't get lost in the shuffle in that long to-do list. That said, I am a morning person, and so it's always going to be morning for me. If you feel more creative later in the day, schedule it for the afternoon or as the last task of your day. The most important thing is that it's at a time that suits your BPT, your biological prime time, when you're the most productive, focused, and creative. Content habit tip number 9 is to track it. Tracking a habit is an important part of building it up, especially in the initial stages. There are many different ways to track, but an easy option is the Seinfeld method. Put simply, the Seinfeld method tracks a habit using a calendar, and each day you completed the habit, you cross the day off with an X or a check mark or a smiley face, whatever works. This provides a visual representation of how committed you've been and also provides a little motivation to keep going on the days where you might be tempted to skip it, right? You got to keep that chain going. One of my favorite features of the Content Habit app is the progress tracker, where you can see how long your current streak is. It's super, super motivating. Content habit tip number 10 is to organize your writing. So organizing your content is a key piece to keeping the wheels of this routine moving. Plus, it helps ensure that creating content consistently, doing that daily content habit pays off for you. At the end of the week or at the end of the month or the end of a 2-week period, set aside some time to go through your writing and process it. So you want to go through and pick pieces that you can share, right? Add them to your content bank. Choose what content needs to be edited and send for editing if needed, or go through the editing process yourself, as well as coming up with your next set of prompts that you can use for your next daily content habit sprint. This habit has a happy little byproduct, Bob Ross approved, which is a lot more content to share with little noticeable effort. You'll have a ton of content to use and share, but making time to process and go through that writing and that content you've created is key. Creating content simplified. So content doesn't have to be the worst part of your business or your day. When you start looking at as a habit and build a strong routine around content creation, it can be something that you actually start to look forward to and enjoy. Plus, the more consistent you are, the easier it gets to create content over time, and the more content you're going to have to share. You can start today by committing to 90 days. By then, you'll have a solidified content habit and be creating it with ease and efficiency. Take it on a test drive by downloading the Content Habit Journal. Now, let me know in the comments, what time of day do you feel most creative? And with that, make sure to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And if you want to be the first to know when a new video goes live, hint, it's usually Mondays, ring the bell. And until next time, here is to your content empire.